This is a Maruti Ertiga, a hugely popular MPV. It is possibly the best-selling family car India has ever seen. Now this is also a Maruti Ertiga, except it's not an Ertiga. This is actually Toyota's version of the same car, and if you look around the back, well, it says Rumion. We have driven and tested the Ertiga before, but this is our first time out with the Rumion, and so in this review I am going to properly test it, tell you all about the features that I like, things that I'm not a fan of, and since we also have the Ertiga over here, I will tell you all the major differences between these two MPVs. My name is Sagar and you're watching Carwale. Okay, this isn't a comparison in any way because let's face it, these two are basically the same car. But of course, they need to have some sort of personality of their own, which is why you will see minor differences with the way these two look. Here on the Rumion, you can see a bit of the Innova High Cross with the way this grille has been shaped. You also get more cuts and creases on this bumper compared to the one on the Ertiga. The Rumion also gets a completely different design for its alloy wheels, although that's where all the differences in the design come to an end. So there are no sheet metal changes on the Rumion, and there is only so much that Toyota can do to make this car have its own identity. Now let's quickly go through everything else that separates the Rumion from the Ertiga. Starting with warranty and prices, the standard warranty on the Rumion is much higher than what Maruti has to offer with the Ertiga. But it's the Ertiga which is more affordable of the two. The Rumion that we have here on test is the top spec automatic variant, and at the time of putting together this review, it's exactly 70,000 rupees more than the Ertiga automatic. Other changes include a negligible difference in length and claimed mileage for these MPVs. Speaking of mileage, we put the Rumion automatic through our extensive city and highway mileage test, wherein we drove this car for over 80 kilometers in city traffic and around 90 kilometers on a wide open highway. All said and done, this is how it fared. In city driving conditions, the Rumion achieved a real-world mileage of 12.97 kmpl while it showed 13.2 kmpl on the driver's display. As for the highway figure, we were maintaining speeds of around 90 km per hour while cruising, and we got 19.5 kmpl while the MID showed 21.2 kmpl. Mileage isn't the only high point of the Rumion. Here are 5 other things which make it an ideal family car. This tiny display between the dials may not look very high tech, but it's got a turn-by-turn navigation feature if you're using Google Maps. Now that is really nice. You get a request sensor for the keyless entry on the driver's side door as well as on the front passenger door. No need to carry fiddly cables with the Rumion because this system supports wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. You get a concealed storage area under this split type luggage board. Now this is basically for you to keep things that you do not want the world to see. This automatic version also gets paddle shifters, which if I'm honest do not make this family MPV any more sporty to drive, but you get a lot more control over the gear changes, and that makes it easier to access maximum power that this engine makes whenever you want. It's not all perfect though. Here are 5 things that could have been better. The auxiliary battery for the mild hybrid system is stored under the front seat, and it takes away some amount of footwell area. Now this would be highlighted all the more if you are someone who is chauffeur driven all the time. This infotainment screen on the Rumion is quite small, and this whole UI, it may seem very basic compared to the system that you will get on the Urban Cruiser Highrider. The seatbelt reminder for the rear seat is very rudimentary. It's not sensor based or anything that will detect the weight of the occupant and then beep. Instead, it will simply beep and it will keep making this noise even if there is no one seated at the back. Annoyingly enough, you will have to keep all the belts buckled in before you start driving, and that's just foolish. There are no dedicated AC vents for the third row. Now anyone seated here will have to rely on the roof mounted AC vents up ahead. Now to be fair, the AC is very effective when it comes to cooling down this huge cabin even under the afternoon sun. For a car of this size, one would expect multiple Type A and Type C USB ports, but the Rumion only gets a single old school Type A USB connection. The Rumion gets a familiar 3-row layout with beige upholstery, wooden finish on the dashboard, and some chrome highlights to uplift the ambience. The dual-tone look for the seat fabric doesn't look bad either, and while we are on the subject of seats, the ones in the middle row are extremely comfortable. Now some may find the cushioning a bit too soft, but there is no doubt that the seats are large and supportive with more than enough under-thigh support. The backrest can also be reclined and you get a surprisingly large recess area under the driver's seat to stretch your legs and keep your feet in there. Like the Ertiga, the Rumion has a bright and airy cabin, and when you combine that with large side windows and the sheer volume of the interior, it makes for a spacious and comfortable drive in the second row. The Rumion gets one-touch recline and slide mechanism for the second row, and it is quite easy. It continues to impress once you are seated in the third row. There isn't as much legroom as the bigger Kia Carens, but what needs to be pointed out is the positioning of the seat base. It isn't simply bolted on the floor, and there is a legitimate distance between the floor and the seat base, which means you are not entirely seated with your knees up. It's not just for kids, and I think adults would be somewhat comfortable in here as well. In terms of practicality, the third row gets a 50-50 split and the backrest can also be reclined. The Rumion gets cup holders and a power socket in each row, large bottle holders on all four doors, and air-cooled cup holders at the front. Special mention goes out to just how easy it is to get in and out of the Rumion thanks to its approachable ride height and a large ingress area. Refined, easy and user-friendly. If I have to describe how the Rumion feels behind the wheel in a few words, it would be that. This 1.5 litre naturally aspirated engine feels quiet. This 6-speed torque converter automatic gearbox is super smooth. The visibility all around is great. The glass area is huge and the dashboard is set quite low. It all makes for a nice, straightforward driving experience that's not intimidating at all. Don't get me wrong, the Rumion is a fairly large vehicle and yet it feels light on its feet, and because you have this 6-speed torque converter automatic, it is all quite manageable. One of the biggest positives of this naturally aspirated petrol engine is its refinement and NVH levels. On idle, it is so smooth and quiet that you may even double check whether you have turned the engine on or not. And when you are doing everyday speeds, say driving in city traffic or driving on relatively empty roads, it remains silky smooth and there are no vibrations whatsoever. This engine with this 6-speed torque converter automatic seems like a match made in heaven. But if you compare it to something like the Kia Carens turbo petrol with its 7-speed DCT gearbox, then in comparison it feels a little mellow. But for its intended purpose and what it's meant to do, well, it is more than adequate. At low to medium speeds, the Rumion automatic is quite eager to go at the touch of the throttle. It's a typical torque converter trait. Even under partial load, it pulls well and it feels powerful if you drive it on part throttle. Having said that, you will feel the lack of torque as soon as you go full throttle. At this point, the cabin gets loud and the extra noise isn't accompanied by a whole lot of speed. All said and done, it is best to drive the Rumion at part throttle. It's almost like this car wants you to adopt a sedate driving style. It's just an honest and straightforward driving experience which I think a lot of Rumion users would appreciate. And as we have established earlier on in this video, the Rumion automatic is good on fuel efficiency as well. So if mileage and ease of use is something that's high up on your list of needs, then this might be the right family car for you.